In this video, I will present 5 elements that are usually discernible when using inquiry-based learning in your teaching. These elements are interconnected and help to shape students into independent inquirers. These elements, which I will be describing, can be described as inquiry phases. In the article Phases of Inquiry-Based Learning, Definitions and the Inquiry Cycle, a meta-analysis on the state of research on inquiry-based learning by Marcus Pedaste and more, they show that the research literature expresses a variation of how these phases are described. However, they clarify from their research review that they are all really talking about the same things. Therefore, they propose the following elements as part of an effective inquiry-based learning strategy: orientation, conceptualization, investigation, conclusion, and discussion. So, orientation is about laying the foundation for the student's inquiry. That is, the teachers points to a problem that will form the basis of the student's journey. In order for them to understand this problem, it may be appropriate for them to have some knowledge about the subject. The teacher has a rather large role at this stage in that he or she has the task of ensuring that the students have the basic knowledge needed to understand the subject they are studying and formulating the problem in a way that arouses their desire for to inquire. The focus is thus on creating the necessary conditions to inspire students to want to undertake a project of inquiry. Conceptualization is about understanding the problem at a deeper level. The aim here is to find out what the problem is about so that the research question or hypothesis can be clarified. This in turn lays the foundation for students to start searching for answers to address the previously described problem. After the problem has been identified and the research question and possible hypothesis has been formulated, the students enter the investigation phase. This phase is the one that often comes to mind when we talk about inquiry-based learning. Students who individually or in groups conduct their own small projects of inquiry where they are responsible for producing knowledge. This stage is expressed in 3 ways: as exploration, as experimentation, and as data interpretation. Again, how this is expressed varies between different research fields and programs, but as a general rule, this stage is about collecting knowledge, which they then test and finally interpret. This then allows students to return to their original research question and draw conclusions in relation to it. The next stage is therefore naturally conclusion. As the term suggests, here the students draw conclusions from the investigation that has been carried out. This includes the students reflecting on whether a result has been obtained for the research question and the possible hypothesis. And finally, we have discussion. This part has 2 subcategories: communication and reflection. Research results are not something that should remain within the individual student or student group. They should also be presented, meaning communicated, to a wider audience that critically examines your results. This also includes taking part in the research results of others and critically reviewing them yourselves. Concordantly, reflection is an inward-looking process where you reflect on how you came to the conclusions you did. Here it becomes relevant to ask, what did I do? Why did I do so? Did I do it well? What are other options in a similar situation? Thus, you reflect on the research process itself and critically examine yourself and your group's process. So if you have experience in research, these phases will certainly look familiar. Apart from the time when you are a PhD student, the only thing that this model really differs from the researcher's practices is that you are not always supervised in the process. But otherwise, it is the same practices that the researcher is involved in that students are also allowed to be part of. when being taught through inquiry-based learning. Also, a researcher is aware that this process is not always as linear as it is presented here. How the different phases are linked to each other when they are addressed and how often varies between different disciplines. Throughout the research process, one must also go back and reassess previous steps. Therefore, Marcus Pedaste et al. Present the following model of how inquiry-based learning works in practice. As we see here, the process will require taking steps back as needed. For example, it may be important to re-evaluate your research question when you come to a conclusion, if your conclusions cannot answer that question, but can answer something else. Similarly, this model shows that communication and reflection occur throughout the process. Here we can imagine a student who is writing the final thesis. They should have several opportunities to present their work and develop it in relation to the comments they receive from their teacher, their supervisor, and their fellow students. Regardless, as a model, these inquiry phases describe how inquiry-based learning is expressed in different educational programs. Some programs may have a greater emphasis on some of these phases, while others make sure to incorporate all phases in their curriculum. However, the model is helpful for all education in that it clearly highlights all relevant stages of inquiry-based learning. In the next video, we will be talking more about how inquiry-based learning can develop the students' critical thinking skills. So see you there.